Hello, invisible friend. April here, and the date today is March 30th, 2026. Welcome to episode 338 of the Big Sky Astrology Podcast. This week, love, money, and values come into focus when Venus enters her home sign of Taurus. Then she starts to let loose of what isn't needed as she meets up with Pluto. April Fool's Day shines with the brightness of the Libra Full Moon. A groggy Mercury gets a caffeinated jolt from Jupiter. Then the sun spotlights the message that arises from their meeting. And I answer a listener question about lawsuits. On Monday, March 30th at 9:01 a.m. Pacific Time, Venus enters Taurus, where she'll stay until April 23rd, and this is one of Venus's favorite places to be. Venus rules Taurus and is very much at home in this sign. It is strong and settled, comfortable in its own skin. The Sabian symbol for the first degree of Taurus is a clear mountain stream, and it's a beautiful image of simplicity and pleasure that comes from something natural and pure and sustaining. This is a transit that reminds us to slow down a little bit and enjoy what feels genuinely good. Venus in Taurus delights in earthly pleasures and luxuries, beautiful jewelry, lovely scents, soothing spa treatments, music, really good food and drink. This can be a transit that is a little bit spendy, but it's not usually about impulse buying. Venus in Taurus prefers quality over quantity, choosing things that are very well made and that are meant to last. You'll probably find yourself spending money on experiences that feed the soul as well as the body, like concerts and plays, music, getting a facial, anything that brings beauty into your home or your garden. The deeper lesson about Venus here is about value, learning what's worth investing in, and allowing pleasure to be a form of grounding rather than overindulgence. And now for the moon report. And we begin, as always, with the week's major lunation. This week, that's the Libra Full Moon on Wednesday, April 1st at 7:12 p.m. Pacific Time. That's at 12 degrees, 21 minutes Libra. And yes, it's happening on April Fool's Day, which feels just a little bit appropriate. The Sabian symbol for the moon is 13 Libra, children blowing soap bubbles, while the sun symbol is 13 Aries, an unsuccessful bomb explosion. If we take them together, these images set a tone of lightness with the children blowing the bubbles, and play and perspective, since something that might have been tense or dramatic or threatening turns out to be a lot less serious than expected. This Libra full moon is the awareness point for the new moon that occurred back on March 18th at 28 degrees, 27 minutes Pisces, making this a really good moment to review the plans that you made at that new moon. Libra and the full moon phase both emphasize relationship and balance, fairness. So this is a pretty good time to ask some honest questions. Are you falling into any difficult patterns with the people that you care about? Are your goals fair to everybody involved? And that includes you. And will the way that you're pursuing your goals throw your life out of balance? The good news is that with a full moon, clarity brings choice. If something feels off, it's not too late to adjust your course. Venus rules this full moon, and she has, of course, just arrived in her springtime home of Taurus, and that adds a stabilizing influence. This lunation can remind us of the limits of going it alone and the strength that can come from working with others, cooperation, compromise, shared intention, even when that means that we don't always get exactly what we want. The moon's Sabian symbol, children blowing bubbles, encourages playfulness and curiosity and not taking everything so seriously, while the sun's symbol of the unexploded bomb reassures us that some conflicts will lose their power once we stop feeding them. This is a full moon that invites us to restore balance by choosing harmony over drama and perspective over fear. This is the full moon in a lunar phase family cycle that began with the new moon on October 2nd, 2024 at 10 degrees 3 minutes Libra. Anything that was happening in your life at that time, especially related to things like an important relationship or getting along with others, is now coming back for review. The first quarter in this phase was on July 2nd, 2025 at 11 degrees 9 minutes Libra, and that might have been a time that you took some action toward goals, especially that had to do with relationship or pairing up with other people to accomplish something. This full moon gives us an awareness point at 12 degrees 21 Libra, where we can really see both the strengths and the weaknesses of the plans that we formed at that new moon back in October 2024. And now we can take stock and decide what we might need to change going forward in the rest of this cycle. 9 months from now, on December 30th, 2026, is the last quarter moon in the cycle at 9 degrees 5 minutes Libra. Whatever it is that you're getting clarity on now, you can take a final action on at that last quarter moon that will really help you clarify what this whole lunar phase family cycle has been about and how you can bring it to completion in the best possible way. Let's look at the void of course moon periods for this week. On Tuesday, March 31st, the moon in Virgo trines Uranus in Taurus at 5:31 p.m. Pacific time. It's void of course then for 2 hours 20 minutes and enters Libra at 7:51 p.m. When the moon makes a trine to a planet as it's going void of course, we anticipate some kind of gift or reward. This void of course moon period is happening between two practical earth signs, Virgo and Taurus. On this date, the U.S. income tax deadline is fast approaching. That comes on April 15th, of course, just a couple of weeks away. So if you haven't filed your taxes yet, consider using this void of course moon period to make some progress in getting this unavoidable chore out of the way. Maybe you can research and choose some online tools to make the process a little easier. Use this void of course moon period to get in the habit of exploring and using technology to achieve success in performing some of the yuckier tasks of life. On Thursday, April 2nd, the moon in Libra squares Jupiter in Cancer at 1:55 a.m. Pacific time, and this is a whopper. The moon will be void of course for a full day, plus 3 hours and 16 minutes. Then the moon enters Scorpio on Friday, April 3rd at 5:11 a.m. Pacific time. The moon in Libra is always seeking balance and harmony and fairness. Jupiter in Cancer is very interested in improving our home life. The square aspect between them can be a little disruptive, but it can also be very motivating. Use this void of course moon period to do a thorough spring cleaning of your home. Of course, that's if you're in the northern hemisphere. This is a very long void of course moon period, of course, so there's no need to rush the cleaning. Go ahead and dust all the places that typically are out of sight or hard to get to. Wash things like curtains and pillows. Go through your pantry and medicine cabinet. Get rid of expired items. Organize the messes that have been bugging you for months. Infuse your home with some really nice aromas. Feelings of harmony and balance should be much stronger once this job has been completed. Use the void of course moon to get in the habit of staying on top of household maintenance so you can enjoy the comfort of your home year-round and not just in springtime. On Sunday, April 5th, the moon in Scorpio opposes Uranus in Taurus at 2:29 p.m. Pacific time. It's void of course for 2 hours and 2 minutes, then enters Sagittarius at 4:31 p.m. Oppositions tend to bring awareness, and they tend to have a relational quality to them. Scorpio and Taurus both consider resources a high priority. If you use Tuesday's void of course moon period to calculate your taxes, this could be a very good void of course moon period to actually file them. My teacher used to say that you should file your taxes during a void of course moon period because nothing will get in the way of their being accepted by the IRS and the matter will end there. No audits. Use this void of course moon period to get in the habit of using simple electional astrology like this, like using void of course moon periods to initiate new habits or to take important action where you don't want there to be any kind of follow-up. Mercury trines Jupiter on Friday, April 3rd at 4:28 a.m. Pacific Time at 15 degrees 57 minutes Pisces and Cancer. Now, Mercury moves pretty quickly, and it doesn't often repeat the same aspect to another planet in a brief period of time. But because of Mercury's retrograde cycle, this particular trine between Mercury and Jupiter is actually the third and final one. So it's a conclusion in a longer story. The first trine was on February 16th when Mercury was direct and Jupiter was retrograde. The second came on March 8th when both planets were retrograde. And now on April 3rd, the final version with both Mercury and Jupiter direct. And that makes this final trine especially important because it's where things can finally come together. It's worth looking back and asking yourself if you see any through lines connecting all three aspects on February 16th and March 8th and where you are now. This could have to do with important conversations or decisions, ideas, or realizations that have been developing over this time. The themes to look out for include communication, travel, weather, health because of Pisces, relationships, emotions, spirituality, and anything that involves your family or your very close inner circle. There can be a lot of information coming in whenever Mercury is connecting with Jupiter. It will come through the news or through other people, social media, or just through your own instinctual awareness. Because this trine happens in water signs, Pisces and Cancer, Clarity often arrives when you slow down and let your focus soften. Maybe take a walk by the water or a quiet drive or even just soaking in the tub can help these insights surface naturally. This can be a genuinely enjoyable transit, but it comes with a caveat that we often share when Mercury connects with Jupiter, that it's very easy to cherry pick facts that support what you already believe. So stay curious rather than certain, and that can help this transit work in your favor. It's an excellent time to articulate your beliefs and dreams and hopes for the future, especially by writing them down. On Friday, April 3rd, Venus squares Pluto at 3:38 p.m. Pacific Time at 5 degrees 15 minutes Taurus and Aquarius. When Venus makes something like a square aspect, which is very dynamic, to a planet like Pluto, it intensifies our desires. Venus shows what we want and what we're drawn to. And Pluto amps up that pull that draws us. Sometimes the point where it's hard to say no. And when we can feel desperate to get something we want, and that might push us in a negative direction, like being manipulative. One of the challenges of this aspect can be that something that is genuinely beautiful or appealing can somehow stir up some of our least lovely impulses. This transit also raises some big human questions. How do we love people and life to the fullest extent, even knowing everything changes and nothing lasts forever? How do we grieve losses without losing our appreciation for what's good and meaningful? Financial and relationship issues can surface under this aspect. Pluto has a way of pushing us to separate our sense of security and self-worth from external things, possessions and appearance, status, money, and that can be uncomfortable, but also can help us see more clearly what's truly important to us. And in relationships, we might have to decide whether we can still love someone once we have seen their flaws more clearly. And finally, on Sunday, April 5th, the Sun squares Jupiter at 3:22 p.m. Pacific Time at 16 degrees 8 minutes Aries and Cancer. Both of these planets are in signs where they are exalted, which means that this transit has a very big, confident, larger-than-life quality. This is a transit that can make life feel bigger and brighter, full of new possibilities. This aspect picks up threads from the Mercury-Jupiter trine that happened on April 3rd, so it's worth noticing whether there are themes that are showing up again from that time. Ideas and conversations, opportunities, decisions that are still unfolding. Sun square Jupiter is actually excellent for putting yourself forward, exploring your creativity, demanding attention, and generally having a good time. That said, Jupiter always asks for a little self-awareness. It's easy to get a little too full of ourselves during a transit like this. Share the spotlight with others. That goes a long way toward keeping this energy healthy. Your tolerance can be pretty low right now for being told what to do or what to believe, so take a little time to check in with yourself. Are you being a little bossy, a little bit too certain, a little bit too forceful in expressing your beliefs? In this week's listener question, listener Dana writes, "Thanks for your always super stellar podcast. It is a highlight to every week." Thank you, Dana. I've been going through some extreme circumstances over the last few years and recently realized I might have a large lawsuit on my hands. I do not take this lightly, but I would be the plaintiff seeking damages against another party or several. I was wondering if this might be reflected in my natal chart. I did a little searching, but I couldn't find consistent information on where lawsuits in general or major lawsuits against others might show up in the chart, or if there is a way to see if the outcome might be positive for me. I'm not sure if context matters, but this is about medical malpractice. Dana, thank you for your question. I'm not an expert in this area, but I will share with you my understanding, mostly from what I learned through my teacher and in certain things I've read about lawsuits and how to look for them in your chart. And just to clarify, I'm talking about lawsuits in the natal chart. Some of these rules might be slightly altered in something like a horary chart, where you ask a question and then the astrologer interprets the chart of the moment they understand the question. Some rules might be slightly different in those charts, where, for example, the judge tends to be found in the 10th house. But my understanding is you are ruled by the first house and the ruling planet of the sign on that cusp. And your opponent is ruled by the 7th house and the ruling planet of the sign on that cusp. Generally, the judge and jury are ruled by the 9th house and its ruler. Money from lawsuits is ruled by the 8th house. Those are just basics. And in a practical sense, I would probably work with it something like this. I would consider the planetary rulers of the 1st and 7th houses and determine which one of them has the most strength by dignity, placement with the angles, if it's with benefic planets. Also, planets in these houses can be important. If it's Venus or Jupiter, extra strength would go to that house and the person that it represents. If it's Mars or Saturn, that person might tend to struggle a bit. Depending which house looks strongest by ruler might tell you how things typically go for you in lawsuits or other contests. The condition of the 8th house ruler, and especially its aspect to the ruler of the 2nd house, which represents money from another 8th house coming to you, 2nd house, might show generally whether your chart suggests money from lawsuits. In terms of how a particular lawsuit is likely to play out, we could look at transits and progressions or by asking a horary question. So in terms of the birth chart, first I would look for any major transits or Mars in the 1st or 7th house or in aspect to their planetary rulers. If Mercury were the ruler of the 1st house, with Saturn making a conjunction, square, or opposition to it by transit, you'd probably have to work a lot harder for a victory. Same for the opponent with a similar aspect to their ruler. A hard planet like Saturn in a sextile or trine to the 1st house ruler probably says that a victory might be slow or otherwise difficult, but will eventually bring a good result for you. This is where we'd take another look at the planetary rulers of the 1st and 7th houses, both natally and with regard to transits and progressions. If the 1st house ruler is Mercury in Leo, but it has progressed into Virgo, then that would be to your advantage because Mercury is very strong in Virgo. If the 7th house ruler is Saturn in Aquarius, well, it has some strength because it's in its rulership, but Saturn does move slow. And by transit right now, at least, Saturn is in Aries, where it's in its fall. So that is kind of a mark against your opponent. This is just one example of how this might work, and we can't determine who wins based just on one or two placements. But I might be inclined maybe to make a list with one column for you and the other for your opponent, and list pluses or minuses in each column. You could do something similar with the ruler of the ninth, comparing its natal aspects to the first house and seventh house rulers to see who generally would be favored for you in a contest. But for specific lawsuits, you would look at transits and progressions involving the ruler of the ninth to the ruler of the first and the ruler of the seventh. It sounds kind of simple, really, when I lay it out like this, but it's usually a bit more complicated once you start digging into it. For these kinds of matters, clients often do prefer a horary question, such as, will I win the lawsuit? Interpreted by a horary expert, which for the record, I most definitely am not. Dana, I hope that helps, and that your lawsuit, should you pursue it, be resolved in a positive way for you. If you have a burning question about astrology that you would like me to answer on a future episode, leave a voicemail of 1 minute or less at speakpipe.com/Big Sky Astrology Podcast, at april@bigskyastrology.com, and be sure to put podcast question in the subject line. Well, that's everything on my show sheet, so I'm going to wrap this one up. Thank you for listening to the Big Sky Astrology Podcast. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to subscribe or follow the show in your app of choice. It's totally free. And leave a rating or a review. And I hope you'll help spread the word by telling an astrology-loving friend about the podcast. You can read show notes and full transcripts and leave your comments about each episode at bigskyastropod.com. I'd like to thank everyone who has continued to show support for the podcast over the years, and in particular, during my September Podathon. On each episode, I'm thanking some of my financial donors by name. This week, let's give a Big Sky Astrology Podcast shout-out to new donors Sarah Peters and Cynthia Roman. Cynthia and Sarah, thank you so much for listening to the podcast and for supporting the show with your donations. If you'd like to support the show and receive access to my bonus video episodes for donors only, please go to bigskyastropod.com and make a contribution of $10 or more to receive access to those episodes. Or you can make a one-time donation in any amount or become an ongoing monthly contributor. That is it for this episode. Join me again bright and early next Monday. And until then, keep your feet on the ground and your eyes on the stars.